When my twin sister walked into my hospital room, covered in bruises, I felt something deep inside me snap. Her name is Leela Clark and mine is Nina. We were born identical, but our lives could not have been more different. I spent the last 10 years locked inside Crestwood Mental Hospital, and she spent those same 10 years trying to build a life that kept falling apart. The doctors here say I have an impulse control disorder. They use words like unstable, unpredictable, emotionally volatile. I prefer simpler words. I feel everything too much. When I am happy, I feel it until my chest burns. When I am angry, I feel it until the world blurs. That is what brought me here in the first place. When I was 16, I broke a boy's arm with a chair. He was dragging Leela by her hair into an alley, and I saw red. I don't remember much after that. Only the sound of the bone cracking, his scream, and the faces of the people watching me. They did not look at him. They looked at me. They called me a monster. My parents were terrified. The world decided I was dangerous, so they locked me away for everyone's safety. 10 years is a long time to live behind walls. My room is smaller than a parking space, with white paint that never stays clean. I watch the world through iron bars, the way others watch TV. I read books, I write notes I never send, and I train. Every single day. Push-ups, pull-ups, anything to burn the fire under my skin. I turned my body into the one thing no one could control: strong, disciplined, ready. But I am not unhappy here. The silence keeps me company. No one screams at me. No one lies. It is almost peaceful. Until today. The air felt heavier this morning, the sky outside gray and low. I sat on my bed, waiting for visiting hour. Something in me knew it would not be like the others. When the door opened and Leela stepped in, I barely recognized her. She was thinner than I remembered, her shoulders bent under an invisible weight. Her blouse had a torn collar, buttoned all the way to her neck, despite the summer heat. There was makeup caked unevenly under her eyes, but it could not hide the bruise that crept along her cheekbone. For a moment we just stared at each other, twins, mirror images, but one of us looked like she had been living in a nightmare. My heart started pounding, and for the first time in 10 years, I felt that old, dangerous fire waking up again. Something had happened to my sister. And whoever did this to her was about to learn that the world had locked up the wrong woman. Lila sat down across from me, setting a small basket of fruit on the table between us. The oranges were bruised, just like she was. She smiled faintly, but her lips trembled. "How are you doing, Nina?" she asked, her voice fragile, almost afraid to exist. I didn't answer. I just looked at her. The way she avoided my eyes, the way she kept tugging at her sleeves. I reached out and touched her wrist. She flinched. "What happened to your face?" I asked quietly. She tried to laugh, the sound dry and hollow. "I fell off my bike." I repeated her words, slower, colder. "You fell off your bike, and only bruised one side of your face?" Her eyes darted away. She twisted her hands in her lap. Her fingers were swollen, her knuckles red and raw. They weren't the hands of someone who fell, they were the hands of someone who fought back and lost. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice calm. "Lila, tell me the truth." "I'm fine," she whispered. I grabbed her sleeve and pulled it up before she could stop me. My stomach turned. Her arms were covered with marks, some old and yellow, some new and dark purple. Lines that looked like belt straps, bruises that shaped like fingers, a map of pain. She gasped and tried to cover herself. "Please, don't." But I had already seen enough. My body trembled, not from fear, but from rage. The kind that had been sleeping inside me for 10 long years. "Who did this?" I asked, my voice shaking. Tears welled in her eyes. "Nina, I can't." I leaned closer, my tone firm. "Who?" Her shoulders broke. The words spilled out like blood from an open wound. "It's Derek. He hits me. He hits me all the time. His mother and sister, they hate me too. They treat me like a servant. They even hurt Sophie." I froze. "He hit Sophie?" Lila nodded, sobbing. "She's only 3. He lost money gambling, came home drunk, and slapped her. I tried to stop him and he dragged me into the bathroom. I thought he was going to kill me." The room went silent. The hum of the fluorescent light seemed to fade. I looked at my twin, my other half broken, begging, covered in bruises. I stood up slowly. "You didn't come here for a visit," I said. "You came so I could take your place." Lila's head jerked up, eyes wide with fear. "What are you talking about, Nina?" I moved closer, my voice steady but low. "You're staying here. I'm leaving." Her mouth opened, but no words came out. You can't. You've been in here for 10 years. You don't know the world anymore. You'll get caught. What if they find out? I smiled faintly, a cold, controlled smile. That's the point, Layla. I've lived with monsters for a decade. The only difference is these monsters were behind locked doors. The ones outside? They're free. She shook her head, tears spilling again. You don't understand. That house is hell. His mother, his sister, they'll destroy you. I reached out and gripped her shoulders. You've been destroyed enough. You can't fight them, Lila. You're kind. You still hope they'll change. But I'm not kind. I'm the one they said was crazy. And only someone like me can deal with people like them. She looked at me, trembling. I could see the war in her eyes, fear and relief colliding. Listen carefully, I continued. From this moment you are Nina Clark. You'll stay here safe, quiet. The doctors already think I'm calm lately, they'll see no difference. Just eat, read and rest. If anyone asks, you don't have to talk. They're used to me being silent. Her lips quivered. And you? I'll take care of everything, I said. I'll bring Sophie back. I'll make them pay for every bruise on your body. A flicker of hope appeared on her face, fragile but real. I pulled her into a hug, and for a moment we were just two sisters again, two halves of the same soul. Don't move from here, I whispered. Wait for me. The bell for visiting hour rang. My heart was pounding, but my face stayed calm. I took her old clothes, slipped on her worn shoes, and put her ID in my pocket. The nurse at the door smiled. Mrs. Raines heading out already? Yes, I said, imitating Leela's timid tone. As the heavy metal door closed behind me, the sunlight hit my face for the first time in 10 years. It burned, but it felt good. I took a deep breath. Derek Raines, I whispered, your time just ran out. The bus ride to East Side felt endless. The city had changed while I was locked away, but the ugliness of certain places never did. I followed the directions Lila had whispered to me, turning down narrow streets until I found a small, one-story house at the end of a damp alley. The walls were stained, the paint flaking like diseased skin. A rusty gate leaned open, creaking when I touched it. I stepped inside. The smell hit first stale food, mold and something sour underneath like rot. The floor was sticky under my shoes. Dirty plates piled high on the table, clothes scattered across chairs. I stood there, letting the scene soak in. This wasn't a home. It was a cage. And then I saw her. In the corner, next to a broken cabinet, sat a little girl hugging a headless doll. Her dress was too small, her knees scraped, her hair tangled. Sophie, my niece. When she looked up, I froze. Those were Leela's eyes, but filled with fear, not life. She didn't run to me. She pulled back, clutching the doll tighter. It's okay, I said softly, crouching down. Mommy's here. She didn't move. She just stared. And then, from behind me, a voice like vinegar. So, the princess finally comes home. I turned. A short, heavy woman stood in the doorway wearing loud floral pajamas and a scowl that could curdle milk. Marjorie, Derek's mother. Where have you been, huh? Probably wasting more of our money crying to your crazy sister. She spat on the floor. Look at you, useless thing. You can't even keep this house clean. I said nothing. I just looked at her. Something in my stare made her shift uneasily. What are you staring at? She snapped, raising the fan in her hand. Excuse me, mother-in-law, I said evenly. I didn't hear you clearly. The way she blinked told me no one had ever spoken to her like that. Before she could answer, another voice cut in. Mom, stop yelling. I'm starving. A younger woman walked in, Trina, Derek's sister, with messy blonde hair and an expression dripping with contempt. Behind her, a 5-year-old boy swaggered in, already wearing arrogance like armor. He looked at Sophie and sneered. Give me your doll. When she didn't move, he snatched it, ripped off the arm, and threw it against the wall. Sophie's cry was small, broken. Trina laughed. That's my boy. Men shouldn't be soft. I felt my pulse throb in my ears. 10 years of quiet boiled over inside me. The monsters were real, and I was done pretending to be afraid of them. The boy kicked at Sophie again, a cruel grin spreading across his face. Cry, you little baby. Cry. Before his foot could land, my hand shot out. I grabbed his ankle midair. The room went still. His laughter froze on his lips. Let go of me, he shouted, twisting and kicking. I tightened my grip just enough for him to feel it. If you ever touch her again, I said calmly, you'll regret it. He started to scream for his mother. Mom, Grandma, help. Trina charged forward, her face red. Lisa, are you out of your mind? Let go of my son. She swung her hand to slap me, but I caught her wrist before it reached my face. Her skin was soft, unused to real work. I squeezed until she gasped. Sister-in-law, I said coldly, you should raise your child better. He's learning all the wrong lessons here. Trina's eyes filled with tears. You're hurting me. Good, I whispered. Maybe now you'll remember. Marjorie finally moved, grabbing the nearest thing, a feather duster, and hitting my shoulder with all her might. You crazy woman. You think you can talk to me like that? I'll teach you some manners. The duster hit again and again, but I didn't move. 10 years in the hospital had taught me how to endure worse pain than this. I turned slowly and caught the handle mid-swing. She tried to pull it back, but it didn't budge. Our eyes met, hers filled with hate, mine with quiet warning. With one hard motion, I snapped the wooden handle in two. The sharp crack echoed through the room. Starting today, I said evenly, dropping the broken pieces at her feet, this house will have rules. Real ones. No one spoke. The only sound was the trembling breath of the people who once made Leela's life miserable. Then I turned to Sophie, who was still crouched in the corner. Her small shoulders shook with silent sobs. I walked over and knelt beside her. It's okay, sweetheart, I murmured. No one's going to hurt you anymore. She looked up at me through tears, unsure if she could believe that. I smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Come on, baby. Let's get you something to eat. That night, for the first time in her little life, Sophie ate a warm meal in peace. And for the first time in years, that cursed house fell silent. Night fell heavy and thick over the alley. The house was finally quiet, except for the faint hum of insects outside. Sophie was asleep in my lap, her tiny hand clutching my shirt. I sat there, listening to her slow, steady breathing. Then, from a distance, came the growl of a motorcycle engine, followed by the screech of brakes. He was home. Derek Rains, my brother-in-law, my sister's tormentor. The front door slammed open, shaking the frame. The stench of alcohol and sweat filled the air before he even stepped inside. His work shirt was half untucked, stained with grease and beer. His eyes were bloodshot, his face twisted in irritation. Where's my damn dinner? He barked, stumbling through the doorway. When he saw me, his lips curled. Oh, so now you're just sitting there, waiting for me to serve myself. I didn't move. He picked up a glass from the table and hurled it at the wall. It shattered beside me. Sophie woke up, startled, and began to cry. Shut her up, he shouted. I stood, carefully placing Sophie on the couch. She's just a child, I said quietly. Don't talk back to me. He staggered closer, towering over me. You think you can talk to me like that? You forget your place, woman. He raised his hand, the same hand that had struck my sister and my niece countless times. The same hand that thought it owned everything it touched. But this time, it stopped in midair. I caught his wrist, my fingers locked around it like iron. His expression shifted from anger to confusion. He tried to pull free, but he couldn't. What the let go of me? No, I said calmly, you've done enough hitting for one lifetime. Before he could react, I twisted. A dry crack echoed, he screamed, clutching his arm. I stepped closer, my voice low, almost gentle. You like using water, don't you? The sink, the tub, drowning what you can't control. He looked terrified now. I dragged him to the bathroom, filled the sink, and forced his head down. The water splashed, his muffled cries echoing. I lifted his head just long enough for him to gasp for air. Is it cold? I whispered. That's what my sister felt. When I finally let him go, he collapsed to the floor, coughing and sobbing. For the first time in his life, Derek Rains understood fear. Morning sunlight spilled weakly through the dirty windows, cutting across the mess on the floor. I was sitting at the table, calm, sipping the bitter coffee I found in the cupboard. Sophie was quietly coloring beside me. Then came the knock. Firm. Official. Police. Open up. I opened the door. 2 officers stood outside, one older, one young. Behind them, Derek limped out from the side of the house, his arm in a sling, face swollen and bruised. He pointed at me, his voice trembling. That's her. That's my wife. She went crazy last night, she attacked me. The younger officer frowned. Ma'am, is this true? I looked at Derek, then at the officers. Yes, I hit him, I said softly. Derek's eyes lit up. You see, she admitted it. Arrest her. But I continued, it was self-defense. My husband hit me. He's been doing it for years. The older officer studied me, his eyes narrowing. Do you have proof? I walked to the small cabinet and pulled out a folder. Leela's hidden treasure. Medical reports, photos, and notes. These are my injuries from the last few years: broken ribs, bruises, a concussion. Every doctor said the same thing: domestic abuse. I rolled up my sleeve, revealing the old marks still fading on my arm. These are from 2 days ago. He also hit our daughter. The older officer glanced down at Sophie, who was watching silently. His expression changed. Derek stammered, "She's lying, I never." The officer cut him off. "Save it. I've seen this before. A man your size beating a woman half your weight. You're lucky she's still standing." He turned to me and nodded slowly. "You have a right to defend yourself, ma'am. If he touches you or that child again, call us directly." The younger officer looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Derek's face turned pale. The law, the thing he used to hide behind, had just stepped to my side. As the door closed behind them, I looked at him one last time and said quietly, "Remember this, Derek. Fear works both ways." For the rest of that day, the house was silent, but it wasn't peace. It was the kind of silence that waits for something to break. I could feel the tension crawling along the walls like insects. Marjorie and Trina whispered behind closed doors, their voices sharp and low. Even Derek, nursing his bruised face, avoided my eyes. That night, after I put Sophie to bed, I heard them plotting in the kitchen. I stood in the hallway, lights off, listening. "She's not Lisa," Marjorie hissed. "No way, she's that crazy sister from the hospital. I can see it in her eyes." Trina's voice shook. "What do we do? She's too strong. We can't fight her." "What's crazy belongs back in its cage," Marjorie snapped. "We'll put sleeping pills in her soup. When she's out cold, we'll tie her up and call the hospital. They'll come take her away." "And if she doesn't eat it?" Derek muttered. Marjorie gave a cruel laugh. "Then we'll tell her it's for Sophie. She'll feed it to the kid herself." I stepped back into my room, my heart pounding but my face calm. Monsters never learn. Later that evening, Marjorie appeared in the doorway, wearing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Lisa, honey, I made chicken soup. You've been so tense lately. It'll help you sleep." She placed the bowl in front of me, pretending to be kind. "Give it to Sophie first. It's good for children." I looked down at the steaming bowl, then at her. The smell of bitterness and deceit mixed with the broth. "Thank you," I said sweetly, picking up the spoon. I blew on it gently, as if cooling it for the child. Then I accidentally let the bowl slip. It splashed across the floor, the liquid spreading like a small, harmless flood. "Oh no," I gasped. "I'm so clumsy." Marjorie froze. Her fake smile cracked. I smiled back, calm and polite. "Don't worry, Mother. I'll clean it up." Round 1 was over, and they had just lost. After the failed soup trick, I knew they wouldn't stop. Monsters never rest until they've tried every method. That night, I pretended to sleep, breathing slow and steady, my arm draped protectively over Sophie. Around midnight, the floorboards creaked. Soft, cautious steps moved toward my door. 3 shadows slipped into the room: Derek, Marjorie, and Trina. Derek held a thick rope in his bandaged hands. Trina carried duct tape. Marjorie clutched a towel, probably to gag me. "She's asleep," Derek whispered. "Now!" They lunged, but before the rope even touched me, I moved. Years of confinement had honed my reflexes sharper than fear. In one motion, I kicked Trina in the stomach. The impact sent her sprawling against the wall. She collapsed, gasping for air. Marjorie froze mid-step, too stunned to react. Derek hesitated, and that was his mistake. I grabbed the bedside lamp and smashed it against his head. The cheap ceramic shattered. He groaned, blood streaming down his forehead. I slipped behind Marjorie and wrapped my arm around her neck, locking her in place. "One more step, Derek," I said quietly, "and I'll break your mother's neck." He stopped cold, his eyes filled with panic. "No, don't you, what do you want?" I gestured toward the rope that had fallen on the floor. "Tie yourself." "What?" "You heard me." He didn't move fast enough. I shoved Marjorie into him, grabbed the rope myself, and used every knot I'd practiced in 10 years of therapy sessions. In less than 5 minutes, Derek Rains, the man who thought he owned every soul in this house, was tied hand and foot to his own bed. Trina whimpered on the floor. Marjorie sat trembling in a corner, her hands shaking. I looked at them one by one. "You wanted to tie me up?" I said softly. "Now you'll see what that feels like." Then, with deliberate calm, I picked up my phone from the nightstand. turned on the camera, and pressed record. "Let's make sure everyone sees exactly what kind of family this is," I whispered. I waited until the first light of dawn before I left the house. The alley was quiet, the air thin and cold. I walked straight to the precinct. The recording on my phone was ready, and the knot in my stomach had turned into a sharpened focus. When the officers saw me, I handed them the phone and the folder of documents, Lila's medical reports, photos, everything she had hidden in fear. They listened. They watched the video. The same officers who had once doubted now sat with faces gone serious. Within hours, detectives returned to the house. Marjorie and Trina were taken in for questioning. Derek was moved to the hospital with broken ribs and a head wound. The law had finally stepped into the house where no one had helped for years. But law only does so much. I knew bills would pile up, and that leaving without a plan would only trade one kind of hell for another. So I did what needed doing. I made demands. Calmly, with the same steady voice that had tied him to the bed, I laid out the terms. Child support for Sophie that would actually feed her and keep her safe. Return of the money Lila had poured into that house. Compensation for 7 years of abuse and for the little girl's pain. Total, $620,000. I listed the reasons, the receipts, the reports. I explained what fairness looked like. They scoffed at first. Then they counted the hidden cash they'd squirreled away. Greed had always been their weakness. Within 3 days the sum was gathered. No one called it justice. They called it an expense. I took the suitcase, signed the divorce papers, and walked out without looking back. Before leaving the precinct, I went back to Crestwood. I walked down the hall to the common room and stopped cold. There were flowers on a small table and a cake, and people were smiling. Lila, my sister, sat upright in a chair, wearing a patient's uniform but looking like a woman who had just been given a second chance. The director shook her hand, praising her for meeting the evaluation. They were calling it a recovery, a remarkable turnaround. We looked at each other and laughed short, exhausted, incredulous laughs. The paper the doctor handed her was a discharge certificate. The name on it was Nia Clark. The absurdity hit me so hard my chest hurt. Lila winked at me. She had played her part well. She had learned to breathe again in a safe place. She had not been broken, she had been hiding. We walked out together, Lila holding Sophie's small hand, me carrying the suitcase of money. The iron gate closed behind us like a full stop. For the first time in a decade, both of us were free in our own ways. One had freedom of mind, the other had freedom of choice. We had both found healing. We did not rush into a forever plan. We rented a small, sunlit apartment on a quiet street, one with a bathtub and tall windows that opened to trees. It felt luxurious after the cramped, stale air of that alley and the antiseptic smell of Crestwood. We bought small things first, a mattress that didn't sag, thick towels, a sewing machine for Lila, and a bookshelf for me. Lila's hands shook the first time she sat at the sewing machine, but within a week she was making dresses for Sophie, bright, careful stitches that seemed to stitch something back into Lila's heart. Sophie, who had learned to flinch at sudden noises, began to laugh freely. Her laughter was like water poured over dust, small, then spreading, then cleansing. I returned to the habits that had kept me steady in the ward. Early morning runs, books stacked on the table, quiet afternoons reading aloud while Sophie played. The anger inside me never fully disappeared, but it softened. It became a compass rather than a weapon. When I thought of those years behind bars, I felt a complicated gratitude, grateful that those years taught me discipline, strength, and the ability to act when it mattered most. Neighbors slowly learned our names. Lila found a job at a small tailor shop. Sophie started daycare and within months began to make friends. We planted a tiny herb garden on the balcony, basil, rosemary, and watched them grow as we did. Each new habit was an assault on the past, a deliberate, small reclaiming of ordinary life. We talked often and late into the night, about what had happened, what we'd lost, and what we wanted next. We did not pretend the scars were gone. Some mornings Lila would wake and the look of fear would still flash in her eyes. I would take her hand and remind her of the rules. We protected each other, we spoke truth, and we refused to be small again. Months passed. The money eased the practical worries, but the real work was emotional. Therapy, patience, small victories. We were rebuilding not just a house but a life. In the quiet moments, when Sophie's head rested against Lila's shoulder and the city sang outside our window, I would think, feeling too much is not a curse. It is the proof that you are human, and sometimes it is the very thing that saves someone else. This is not a story about violence for its own sake. It is about what happens when courage replaces silence. It is about two sisters who chose to protect what mattered, even when the world had labeled one of them as broken. I am not proud of every blow struck, but I am proud of the moment we chose life over fear. If this story touched you, if you know someone who needs to hear that staying silent is not the only option, share this video. Like, comment where you're watching from, and let people know that abuse is never a private matter. If you're in danger or you know someone who is, reach out to local authorities or a trusted organization today. Courage begins with a single voice. Use yours.